Hey guys, I think this is my second space in a month, which is so unbecoming of me. Um, yeah, so I guess a lot has happened over the last few days. Um, the biggest one, obviously, to me, for obvious reasons, is Sean Kirkpatrick's post DOD op-ed in which he more or less validates my reporting for the last few years. And that was pretty, I was surprised and shocked to actually see that because for so long, uh, for a few, 2 years at least, it's been, I haven't seen anyone else even look into it, much less at that level talk about it. And so to see it in black and white, in Scientific American with his byline, the head, former head of the Pentagon's UFO office, to see my reporting, my hard worked, hard earned reporting in there was, um, it was shocking to see that. And from him of all people, Kirkpatrick, I think, was a mystery to a lot of folks on his what relationship did Kirkpatrick have with the Lou Elizondo crew, the Jay Stratton crew, the Skinwalker crew, to what degree, all of these questions I had. And so to see him link to my reporting, which nukes the claims of all the people I just listed, was quite surprising to me. And then not only that, but to see him in his own words validate that was quite amazing. I'm gonna go ahead. I don't have much time. I just have like 60 minutes. I had 60 minutes, so I thought I'd jump on here. I'm gonna take requests and pardon my. I might be slow here sometimes to approve people, but I'm gonna do it. Okay, Mick Greenwood, go ahead, sir. Mick. Let's see. Mick was there. I don't see him anymore. I guess I can just keep talking. Um, Let me see here. I'll just keep talking. Mick was there and then he disappeared. And then the other thing that was just jaw dropping, just absolutely jaw dropping, was um, Travis Taylor just kind of going off on social media, on LinkedIn, and then I guess apparently on some extremely large email list, just ranting. uh, Insanely, just saying some of the craziest things. And like, look, I knew Taylor says silly, stupid things. Taylor says silly, stupid things all the time, but this was a whole nother level, man. I mean, with him saying, I mean, didn't he? Yeah, he called Mick West a butthead. And he said he called us pigs. Skeptics are pigs, and they're going to burn in hell for their evil. I just can't believe it, that he despises these people who question his narrative. So instead of providing evidence to back up his claims and his, you know, he this is instead of doing that, he starts calling people pigs and I hope they burn in hell. I guess that's what happens when your fantasy starts to fall apart. Is I guess like a cornered rat, you just start lashing out. It's quite surprising to see, um, even for Taylor, who I've been following for a while and paying attention to. This was a whole nother level of just rabid ranting. I don't know. Maybe behind the scenes he is kind of like that all the time, but I don't know. To me, it was quite surprising. So if anyone wants to request to speak. You can request to speak, and then I'll approve you. Um, Anybody has a question or whatnot. Um, so this was oh, and then the other thing that I forgot to mention, and I noticed some people picked up on this, is this mandated report from AARO that is due to Congress and to the public as well. Kirkpatrick says that his uh, conclusions, or some of his conclusions, which he writes, some of which in his Scientific American op-ed, will be included in this report, this historical report. He seemed to allude that basically his statements about a group of, quote, conspiracists who have been essentially promoting and pushing to Congress, that I guess he's going to go into that in sir or ma'am. Yeah, there
I
you
just
go.
want to ask a question about what was your final conclusion about Skinwalker Ranch?
Okay, thank you for the question. My final conclusion about Skinwalker Ranch was that there's a whole lot of nothing at Skinwalker Ranch, and there probably always has been a lot of nothing. I I, I discovered a group of some of true believers, some people who were true believers seeking the paranormal, uh, and were, I guess, blinded by that pursuit, and we're seeing UFOs when in spiders, and they were seeing bees fly through the air, and they thought it was like spacecraft traveling at millions of miles an hour, and
So,
just a truly, yeah. Go ahead.
so you believe that the $22 million that was granted to them was just to basically see bugs on screens and paranormal stuff that was not actually going on?
No, I don't. Well, the $22 million wasn't given to Skinwalker Ranch. The $22 million was actually allotted to Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies for a aerospace technology program called OSAP, and the kind of the outline of the program was to project, using technology trends, to project what technology will exist in the year 2050.
Correct.
That was it. Yeah, and but part of that, they apparently were
Researching
using Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah.
wasn't the yeah, that was the original plan, and the reason wasn't it to study, they were trying to study anomalous material, but they weren't granted that. That was said by Governor Reed, that he wanted to make a exclusive program by not bigoted,
Mm.
by only bigoted listed, but he was not granted that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I don't know about the material stuff. And in fact, even the authors of the New York Times article later came out and said actually there were no materials,
No, 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 no,
at the
no.
Bigelow.
Right. They weren't granted the materials, but that was the original purpose of the $22 million. The $22 million was actually for them to try to make a facility for them to study it, but they weren't granted that material.
Sure. Yeah, that could be. I've seen no evidence of that. I've seen the claims of that. I just haven't
Right.
seen any concrete evidence to back that up. I do know that this is not something new. Materials, we need to dive in. We need to analyze these materials. The metamaterials is kind of an ongoing thing. And
Right,
there
because
is this.
at the end of the day, we can say whatever we want. We can say, "Oh, this is not real. This is not." But when it comes to the materials, and if you do a scientific investigation of the materials, and if their materials not made of this earth, then what conclusion can you make of that?
Right. I mean, all it takes is one, right? All right. La Flame, thank you so
Thank
much. Bad Scholar.
Yeah. Hey, first of all, I want to say I really appreciate your work on this story. It's been really um, really enlightening, and I do want to apologize for Congressman Burchett. I'm in his district. We're doing our best, but not always sending our best. My my question was regards the. I was really surprised to find that that there seemed to be a little bit of a connection with the LDS Church and some of the
Mm.
um, theological maybe reasoning for being open to some of this paranormal and UFO kind of things. Could you talk a little bit about that? And I'll hang up and let you speak. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. So this was new to me, to be honest to you, but it happened to come up in my investigation, specifically of Skinwalker Ranch. Now, I knew Harry Reid was a Mormon, that he was an active Mormon. I knew that, but I didn't know how deeply those religious beliefs connected, if at all, to Allsap and Skinwalker. And the more I dug into it, I realized that there was this really strong motivation there, religious motivation. I guess one of the big stories is the Joe Firmage story. Joe Firmage is a direct descendant of Brigham Young, who was, one of the founders of the Mormon Church in the 1800s. And, he ran his scheme in the 90s, claiming that he was building some flying saucer anti-gravity machine. And Fugel was caught up in this and investing another Mormon, Fugel, and invested money in this. And at Brigham Young University, as I showed in my reporting, Fugel had he in 2004 he created this historical society that went on these Indiana Jones types adventures around the world, looking for evidence, physical evidence, to prove the Book of Mormon true. And they were looking for giant mummies, and one of the things that they were looking for, that they said that they were looking for, was UFOs, and Bigfoot also, but UFOs. And then Harry Reid talking about how OSAP and Skinwalker all fit into his religious bubble. He's on the record saying that, Mormons believe that there are worlds without number, these parallel universes with civilizations that are alien to our Earth. And maybe the stuff we're seeing at Skinwalker is indicative and evidence of that. And when I was at Skinwalker Ranch, I met all them, and I was like, "Hey, is everyone here Mormon?" And not everyone was actively Mormon, meaning currently, but basically everyone in that room was either born into the Mormon Church, was Mormon, served a Mormon mission, and you can see that once you have that context and you know a little bit about the Mormon theology, you can start looking at patterns of what do they believe, what do they believe, what do they claim to be seeing. When Thomas Winterton, the superintendent of Skinwalker, when he talks about hearing voices on the ranch, he said he initially attached it to the Holy Ghost, the Mormon Holy Ghost, which, I grew up Mormon. They teach you a literal voice talks to you. They literally teach that in the church, that this literal entity speaks to you telepathically, like in your head. And I was like fascinated by that. And I was like, whoa. Now, in the big picture, let's talk big picture here. I don't think it's like some big Mormon thing. I think the Mormon thing is a microcosm, right? It's a study group. And I don't think it represents the entirety of like UFO pursuit or Lou Elizondo. Or Jay Stratton's Jewish, I don't think it like applies to everyone, but it was fascinating, a fascinating aspect of it. So I hope I touched on some of your question there. You give me a thumb up. Okay, Paradigm. Paradigm. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, hey, Stephen. Just want to say, first of all, thanks for the documentary. I found it
Mm-hmm.
insightful and appreciated you, exposing people who kind of take advantage of the layman. That said, I'm not as convinced either way about this whole phenomena as you are, and I'm curious if you're ever going to take your investigation further back. I mean, look, you've done plenty of work, you've done the field of service, but I think I actually messaged you the other day, and you're kind of fine, like, okay, there's a lot of contemporary hoaxers right now and assholes taking advantage of people, but like, I look at Gordon Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
Mercury astronaut. Like, he claims he saw or film, and this guy went to the UN after. Like, how do we account for people like him that, firsthand experience that
Uh,
are seemingly credible? Like,
can,
I don't know.
can I
I
interrupt
guess
you real
I'm going.
quick? You're breaking up a
Yeah.
little bit. You're breaking up a little
Okay.
bit. Your audio is breaking up. I think you have a
Okay.
loose connection or a weak connection. You're echoing just a little bit there. But I think what you're saying is that, obviously UFOs did not begin in 2017. It also did not begin in 1996 with NIDS. Obviously, the idea and the pursuit of the quote unquote phenomena did not begin even in 1947 with Roswell. Obviously, something in the sky and the pursuit of what it could be is something that dates back many years. I would say that most of my focus right now is the influence the topic has on the United States government, the United States military, the United States Congress, and our national mainstream media. That's kind of my hyper focus right now, because it's one thing and it's fine and it's fun. And I used to be one of them, especially in the 90s, to talk about UFOs, to pursue UFOs, to study UFOs, to write books about UFOs. But when that gets to the level where congressional leaders are being influenced, laws are being written, headlines by the national media are being, printed, then it's like, okay, whoa, wait a second. Let's get really serious now. It was fun, but let's get serious about this now. And when I got serious about it, I discovered it's mostly malarkey being spewed by the same group of people, a group of people that you can literally, if you did a family tree of who is currently doing and claiming this and influencing this, you could date some of these people back to the 60s and 70s. Same group of people. I think that's what Kirkpatrick was essentially saying in his op-ed, and I think that's what the facts show. It's always that thing. I mean, there was a point in time when we didn't know that Travis Taylor was the senior scientist for the UAP task force, and it was announced like, oh, we're going to reveal who the scientist on UAP task force was. I remember this, and I was so stoked, and I was like, oh, it's going to be someone new, someone we haven't heard of. It's going to be some brilliant scientist. It is going to be like, no doubt, like it's going to up the credibility. And then it was like, and it's Travis Taylor, star of Ancient Aliens. And you're like, God damn it. It's like always the same people involved with this. And Jay Stratton was another one. Jay Stratton was a giant mystery. He was my white whale. Stratton was, and perhaps I put too much on him. Before we got to know him, before he went public, I was holding out. I was like, I'm going to hold out for the Stratton guy, because he seems to have had his fingers in everything, but we haven't heard from him. I'm going to hold out and wait till we hear from this guy, because maybe he has some truth bombs and some evidence and some dots to connect to the puzzle where all of this will start to make more sense. And then he comes out and he's like Mr. Skinwalker, Mr. Travis Taylor. It's just like the same stuff all over again. Nothing really new. And you're just like, God damn it. It's like the same story, the same people for years. And anyway, so that's that. I kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there. Anyone else have any questions? Just hit the request button. Even if just do it again. If I missed you, it pops up my screen, and then I'll approve you, and you can speak. Anyone can speak here. Even there were some people mad at me. I think every other post on the UFO subreddit this week was like, Greenstreet did it again. Guy can't stand it. It's like every other post on Reddit. Hope some of those guys are here and we can like talk about it, man, because they're mad. People are mad. People are mad about UFOs. They're mad. It's almost religious in nature, and if you look at the rants of Travis Taylor, there are some like highly religious overtones in there, talking about going to hell and burning in hell, and God will judge us or something like that. It just absolutely amazing. So there is a very obvious religious aspect to this. Okay, disclosure diaries. Go ahead, disclosure diaries. I think I just approved you. If not, I'll just add you. Oh yeah, there you go. You're muted. You can go ahead.
Hey, Steven. How you doing?
Hey, good.
Thanks for hosting. I'll keep my question very simple and short.
Okay.
I'm just curious where you stand on efforts such as establishing a select committee, or perhaps some of the elements of the UAPDA, just from the perspective of kind of clarifying things once and for all with somewhat of a rigorous kind of independent investigation.
Yeah, I'm all. Okay, yeah. To answer your question, I'm all for that, but there is a but here, and you have to consider the but here is what's the motivation? What spurred this on? Who is behind the scenes drafting either legislation or new rules and regulations? I mean, we just learned if Josh Boswell at the Mail's reporting is accurate, and I believe it is because I know he personally knows all these people because I physically saw him with them. Josh Boswell at the Mail reporting that Lou Elizondo, Travis Taylor, Jay Stratton were drafting Schumer's legislation. That's just, I can't believe it. That's to me is such a red flag. And if dubious characters with dubious motivations have that kind of inside power now to the United States Congress, then that's my butt. You have to look into it and say who benefits, who's pushing this, what's the genesis of this. The idea of investigation is great. The idea of getting to the bottom of it is great, but there are no real adults in this toy room. There doesn't seem to be any. You've got congressional leaders talking about angels. You've got Luna, who just doesn't seem to be that smart of a person, Representative Luna, talking about extra dimensions. No one is stepping in and saying, okay, let's take a step back here and let's really get into it. No one, a big tell is when anyone gets up there and says, this all started with the New York Times in 2017. Gillibrand said that, Burchett said that, most of these congressional leaders say that. This all started for me with this New York Times article. And that New York Times article was false, fraudulent, deceptive, no debate, wrong. And so if they don't know that, that means they're starting off on the wrong foot. They don't have the proper backstory, information, context. I want people to have context, backstory, information if they're going to draft new laws. If they're going to show and improve and establish they don't have that information, but they're just going to move forward drafting new laws, I see that as counterproductive. That's just how I see it. So I think we have to get everything on the table. I think we need more adults like Kirkpatrick to kind of say what's what. And from there, definitely, because there is a problem. We have a UFO problem. We have an unidentified flying object problem in this country, worldwide. We have a UFO problem, and it's being handled so silly, in such a bass backwards way. Anyway, that's a long way to answer your question. Daniel, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I
Daniel,
just
go
had to
ahead.
unmute
Yeah.
myself. Hello from Australia. Thanks for hosting this, Stephen.
Hello.
Really loved your documentary. It was
Sure.
a lot of fun. So yeah, I was just wanting to maybe circle back to what you were just saying before about the religious connection, because I find that really interesting.
Mhm.
And one of the things that kind of jumped out for me looking at this is how UFO discourse or mythology seems to try to address a lot of, dare I say it, like religious questions. So who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? Who are the bad guys? Who are the good guys? It provides some kind of like a coherent meta narrative for which you can lead your whole life in a way. And I just wondered if you had any kind of extra thoughts on that connection. Is it something that you can maybe see in connection to like the loss of religion in some way?
Yeah, kind of the void that's opened up as Catholics are he talks about the pursuit of the mysteries of the universe. Who are we? Why are we here? Is there a higher purpose? And then I have like the Kubrick Barry Lyndon music playing, and it's like that was what I had in mind when I cut that opening to that was faith and the pursuit of higher meaning, and how some people find that meaning in a blurry spider, or they find that meaning in a blurry light, and because to them it could be, what if it could be this, and if it's this, my life has greater meaning, and is that not worth pursuing? That was the kind of the conversation I have at the end of that episode with Eric Bard, a scientist at Skinwalker. It's the whole what if conversation. Well, what if it's true? What would that mean for us, for me? So it's a fascinating thing. Now, recently we see, over the last year, definitely over the last 6 months, a super swing into religion with this UFO thing. You got Danny Sheehan, who rebranded his it's the Paradigm Ministry into the Paradigm Institute. I mean, go there and dig into that website and what they're talking about. It's highly religious. They're talking about like the followers of Lucifer and how to overcome the original temptation of Lucifer, and all this crazy stuff. And we're not talking about someone who's like on a conspiracy blog or above top secret. We're talking about someone who apparently has some ears in Congress, who represents some of the key influencers here in government, in the media, right there. And it's like highly religious and very obvious. And it really does seem to me that there is an embrace from various folks. Some of the main people here are embracing this religious kind of rebranding of the UFO thing. And that's fascinating. And yeah, it could be that modern society is looking for something, that there is a void and a need, and maybe UFOs do that. I know that that's what UFOs did to me. I mean, I'll
Yeah.
be honest. I lost my religion in 2003, 2004, and there was like a void there of, okay, well, now what? And there was the idea of UFOs tickled my brain a little bit way back when. So
Could I
yeah, it's a
just,
good point. Yeah, go ahead.
if I could just jump in on that point you're just saying there about it kind of being rebranded as religion, one of the really interesting kind of Medium articles I found recently on this subject that I thought maybe you might find curious and your listeners might find curious is by Jules Evans from April 2022, The Dark Historical Roots of Starseeds. So it goes into that kind of how it kind of was actually a religious movement that was rebranded as UFOs, where it shifted from Indian gurus and the Aryans, the ancient Aryans, and then was kind of repurposed as UFOs at a certain point. So that's a
Mm.
really interesting connection there too. Just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, sure. And I'm sure if you went back and you looked at like the folklore and the storytelling and the reporting, you could see that transition. But that kind of deals more with beings, aliens, the actual humanoids, and what they are and where they came from, and in some degree, the idea of ufology. The CE3 and CE4, Close Encounters of Third and Fourth Kind, are almost kind of in a different group than the CE1 and 2 folks. Something in the sky. It's a big leap to go, I saw a flying saucer. It's a big leap to go, I was in a flying saucer. So yeah, it's a combination, right? There are all these roads kind of lead and explode. It kind of reminds me in a microcosmic way of the religious revival of the early 1800s in America. I mean, that's where Mormonism was born in the like 1820s, 1830s. There was this like huge revival in America where people were just looking for something new. And along comes Joseph Smith and says God spoke to him, and I have these magical plates. And people were like, yeah, that makes sense to me, and like followed him. But he wasn't the only one. There were lots of people, and it feels like fragmented the UFO story a bit, and everyone's kind of like trying to figure out like, well, which microcosmic camp do I belong to? Is it the super woo crew? Is it the nuts and bolts crew? But I don't know. I've been paying attention to this daily, and there does seem to be a universal, general acceptance for a more spiritual side to this UFO thing. Let me see.
Hey, Stephen, if I may ask, you said that you lost your religion around 2003. Where do you stand like religiously as of now, if you don't mind me asking?
Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Where do I stand religiously? Agnostic, I guess, is the best way to put it. Agnostic.
So if you were shown something that would reflect some kind of biblical proof or anything like that from some government entity, would that bring you back through, or
no,
what do you think?
no, not from some government entity. I don't know. Like, for me, like, spirituality would not come from a government. I don't know. Like, I just wouldn't. I'd have to dig into whatever was presented, and I'd have to create that personal moment where I figure out that it's true. I'm not going to let a authoritative figure kind of dictate the truth of something spiritual. That just seems weird to me, you know. So yeah,
It does.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I'd be
I agree with
yeah,
you.
I'd be open to hearing or seeing whatever presented, but I think there's multiple more steps for me personally to kind of arrive at a conclusion for myself. So yeah. Okay.
And what? One more question: what made you turn away from being a Mormon?
Uh, Interestingly enough, a lot of similarly to the UFO thing, I just started asking questions that I didn't think I should be asking, or didn't have to ask. So with Mormonism specifically, especially in their temple, their secret temples, I started to just feel weird about some of the stuff, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And so I started approaching authorities within the church and saying, hey, how do you justify this? How do you quantify this? How do you explain this? And often than not, I got no answers or terrible answers. And I soon began to realize that they didn't have any answers. And I was like, well, wait, this doesn't make any sense. You should have answers to some of these basic questions. And so that was like the beginning. I just started asking out loud questions. And then when I dove into Joseph Smith and, the court documents that showed he was charged with fraud, and that Mormonism was just yet another of his magical claims, and he had a long documented history of unsubstantiated magical claims. It all started to come clear to me what was really going on, and in my head I was like, well, if it's not true, I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to be a part of something that's not completely true. I don't want to play make believe. So I parted ways with the church. Yeah. And it's basically the same thing I did with UFOs. Was at first I assumed the basics were right, and then at some point I was like, well, wait, no one's asking some of these basic questions. I'll start asking them. I did that, either got no answers, wrong answers, or contradictory answers, and that told me, wait, there's something else going on here. And then 4 years later, the rest is history.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, by the way.
Yeah, of course. If anybody else has a question, just hit the request to speak. That's the easiest way for me to bring in. It's just request to speak, and then I see a notification, and then I click a button, and you start talking because I haven't fully figured out spaces yet. So if anybody else wants to talk, but okay, here, let's see, alien girl. I wonder if you're a UFO fan, alien.
Hey, what's up,
Hey,
Stephen Greenstreet? How are you?
good.
Good. I follow your work all the time. Great stuff. Um, I think my question for you is what about the aerial school? Like, what made you give up aerial school?
Yeah, aerial school is so fascinating, and it's so fun, and I love it. I do. Deep down, it's so awesome. Because I'm a like okay, this is a sidetrack, but Brandon Fugel and I actually have a lot in common. It's scary how much we have in common. And I am a Spielberg guy. I'm a Lucas guy. I'm an 80s guy. Like, that's my decade. And, um, Spielberg with Elliot, with the kids in E.T. And there's something E.T.-ish about Ariel School. You got these like innocent looking kids who are like shown and told something magical, and perhaps the adults don't fully get it, but like these kids, like, you look at these kids being interviewed and you're just like, man, what did they see? What is this story? And it adds to it. If it was just, a couple teachers or whatever, but the fact that it's these kids, I do love that case. Ultimately, I don't think there's enough evidence to point to something unprecedented and extraordinary. At first, Harvard's John Mack was a reputable source, but that was just surface stuff. And then the more I looked into John Mack, the less I became convinced that he was this like um, clinical critical thinker, and that there was a kind of belief system there. And then also the timeline. When I lined out the timeline, I was under the impression, like the interviews of the kids, like initially I was like, oh, this obviously happened day of, day after, maybe 2 days after. But then when I started realizing when was the first time these kids were interviewed versus the first time John Mack interviewed them versus the second time they were interviewed, that timeline's actually more stretched out than I originally thought. And then also having kids of my own, and them approaching the age of the kids in there, and kind of being able to observe childlike behavior, childlike thinking, the way a story develops, the way their imagination works, how they work in groups. Watching kids in a group and watching an idea kind of percolate quickly in a group of kids fast. I just don't think while I would love nothing more for a flying saucer to have landed behind that school and for alien stuff come out and warn the kids about our climate. I'm not convinced, and I would need a very strong, conclusive starting point, and not a story, not a testimony, but something, because it's so extraordinary. I would need something extraordinary, but I still love the case, Alien Girl. I love Ariel. Yeah.
No, it's an amazing case. And I've never really thought about the timelines, but you're right. Because when I go and I look, it's like 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
2 days.
Mm-hmm.
There's a weird timeline.
Yeah.
I mean, it's super fascinating. It's super fascinating.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for answering my
Sure.
question. I've always wondered, like, what would Stephen Greenstreet think?
Yeah. Yeah. It really is that timeline, because I think I just had. If you interview a witness like right after something happens, or even the day before, chances are you're going to get some, raw information that you probably wouldn't get 3 months later. And I guess this is a good seg into my recent interview with, Michael Sinkowski, who, saw the original jellyfish video, the 17 to 18-minute video. I saw his YouTube comments and instantly reached out to him. And I was able to interview him like before Jeremy Corbell, before News Nation, before like he was out there, and I was able to get his kind of like initial reactions, unfiltered reactions. I'm so glad I did that, because you're able to see in real time, over a matter of days, his story updates, alters, changes, right? He talks to Corbell. He's suddenly saying different things. He's on News Nation. He alters. And that's just human nature. He's not someone nefarious, or that's just human nature. Like new ideas pop into your head. Oh, that could be possible. Other, statements pop into your head. Oh, it has been 6 years, so maybe. But that initial interview, I'm so glad I got that, because it's a great data set that you can use to compare to subsequent data sets. Yeah, I totally forgot about that, man. That was pretty cool. I like.
So wait, what about John Mack? What about John Mack? Tell me about John Mack. What do you think about John Mack, Stephen Greenstreet?
Well, I haven't obviously done an episode or an article on John Mack. I did, look into him back when I was quite credulous about Ariel, and I think this happens to a lot of people. They're like, Harvard, say no more. The guy is smart and legit, and it's like that Harvard kind of mystifies you. You're just kind of like, well, if he's good enough for Harvard, he's good enough for me. Harvard obviously doesn't hire people crackpots, so that played a big role for me years ago when I first looked into Ariel. But I guess that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I mean, Gary Nolan works at Stanford somehow, so that's like an example. But so that means less to me now. Anyway, John Mack seemed like a credulous, activist, someone who was looking for something specific and perhaps only saw specific things that he was looking for, and became a celebrity in many ways for alien abduction, which for me, an investigator or journalist, I see no substantive evidence at all that supports any of that. So anyway, John Mack, credulous, true believer, who was trying to tell and look for a specific story and perhaps only saw that. That's my short answer on that. Alien Girl, thank you. Are there, oh yeah, let's see here. Okay, Gonzalo, go ahead, sir. It usually takes a hot second for this to come in. Go ahead, Gonzalo.
I was wondering if you've ever thought about seeing the physical evidence in Peru.
I would love nothing more to see Peru and the alien evidence therein. Yes, I would be fascinated to see any evidence of non-human UFOs and non-human intelligence. Which
Would you be interested in discussing with the main investigator?
Of what? The main investigator of what?
The mummies.
The mummies. No, probably not. I'm not. Look, I'm just going to be honest with you. It's just not a story that interests me. I assume that at some point something as scientifically groundbreaking will be presented and make waves. At which point I would love nothing more. But to me, the alien mummy stuff just seems like a waste of my time. I'm not particularly, especially the detriment that Jamie Moussan has done to that whole thing over the last few years, and he's been pushing the alien mummy hoax for many years. So no, to answer your question, I would not be personally interested in that. I would need something to get me interested in that. And if there is a lead investigator, I wish him well, and I look forward to what he has to present. At which point I might be interested.
What about like the DNA Peru just accepted this week to analyze that?
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, history would be changed if one of those little alien mummy fellas turns out to have DNA that isn't human or found on planet Earth. Yeah, I would be all over that. And I assume everyone else would be all over that. So I look forward to the findings.
Awesome. If you're ever interested, I can contact the main investigator. Hopefully, you can see the bodies if you'd be interested. That way, the disclosure process in the U.S. can speed up.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
There's no point in pretending there's no evidence in the entire world.
Yeah, I mean, there very well might be. I mean, especially in our oceans, right? We know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the bottoms of our oceans. There's a whole hell of a lot more that humanity can still discover that has thus far gone undiscovered. I agree with you there. So thank you, sir, for your question.
Awesome.
Let's see here. UFO Shane. Oh, I'm in UFO Shane. Where are you at? There you are. Approve. I heard you had a space. I didn't listen to. I heard you had a space today where you were talking about stuff, and then Brandon Fugel came in there. What? How'd that go? How'd that go?
it went pretty good, Steven. Someone paid me money, bro, that wasn't a part of Skinwalker Ranch. It's a whole weird thing. You know, there's a lot of people lying to people in the UFO spaces. Well, I mean, Steven, there's people lying. They're grifting their goddamn asses off every day. Like Jeremy Corbell's like, I don't make any money. I don't make any money, man. I have a $70,000 watch on, but I don't make any money. You know what I mean, Steven? Like, there's a lot of liars. There's a lot of liars.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of dishonesty in this field, of course. Yeah.
Don't be nice about it, Steven. You know goddamn well. You've talked to the same people I've talked to. You've talked to George Knapp. You've talked to Jeremy Corbell. You've talked to Brandon Fiegel. Man. You've talked to Chris Bartell, the one truth, like Chris Bartell
Chris,
being the one dude who will tell you the truth.
Chris is
will
great.
tell you the truth.
Chris is great, and Chris really did kind of help me navigate, along with some other folks. But Chris was really great about. He's a no nonsense guy who helped me navigate some of the Skinwalker waters. But more than that, he was, and this is what I loved about him. He introduced me to elements of the history of the ranch with regards to Native Americans, the Ute tribe, and the kind of if you are a spiritualist, that there's something there from that genocide, from that time and place. And I don't know, when I went to Skinwalker, I was grateful that I had spoken to Bartell first, because I did look at the ranch a little differently, and I was able to kind of look into things historically that I hadn't before. But yeah, let me tell you a crazy story. So UFO Shane, so you mentioned Corbell and Nat. I think I told this story on on Twitter, but these guys dodged me. Corbell completely has ignored every request for comment, every opportunity I've asked for him to back him up. George Knapp completely ignoring or running away, doesn't want to talk, right? Doesn't want to back up all of his ridiculous claims. So I went to Alien Con and they were going to be there. And I was like, dude, I am like literally going up to these people. And Corbell was Corbell. I remember I walked up to him. He was like frantically paced outside, chain smoking, like frantically pacing back and forth on the phone. And then when he hung up, I went up and shook his hand. I was like, hi, Jeremy. It's nice to finally meet you. And he shook my hand back and he said, yeah, it's nice to meet you. Maybe. And I was like, that's classic. And then he turned around and ran inside. And then with George, I went up to George, and George is great. Look, George is George Knapp. The guy's a legend. Like him or not, believe him or not, like the guy, dubious or not, the guy is an absolute legend. And, after the thing, I went up to him and he was walking with his entourage. And I went up and shook his hand. I was like, hey, George, it's nice to finally meet you. And I literally could not understand what he said in response. He was like, oh, something like that. He just like garbled something and kept walking. I was like, all right, that was George Knapp, UFO legend. But if there is a video of me confronting them in a Q&A, they couldn't run away. I stood in line and I was like, I'm going to ask them a question. And they're on stage and there's video of me on YouTube of me finally being able to ask them a question. And it goes as expected. Here, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, man. I have to get some other folks. Thanks, UFO Shane. Let's see, Christian. I'm sorry. Here, let me go to my requests. Let's see, Christian. Go ahead, Christian. Christian. Yeah.
Hey, Steven. So, speaking of, I want to speak on Skinwalker Ranch, man. How do you think it's possible to convince, that many people like the Utah Astronomy Group to fucking pull an act, or do you believe that they experienced something real? Can you even get Chinooks to, make a whatever agenda? And do you think Brandon Fugel is trying to pull up some sort of psyop, or
No,
Robert Bigelow, or do you think
no.
something weird is going on? What's your, like, I don't know. I got so many questions
Yeah,
that don't make
yeah.
sense, right?
No, it's all good. Yeah, so I don't think I don't think it's some psyop, and this is just me there. I, you know, I've talked to Brandon Fugel a lot on the phone leading up to my visit. I was then tied to him at the hip, like one on one. I saw this guy's life. He toured me around and showed me, and I've been doing this documentaries, interviewing people, journalism for a long time. I have a decent bullshit meter, and I was able with Brandon. I was like, this guy believes it. Like he's he could be gullible, an extremely gullible fella. I mean, we see evidence of that through his, with Joe Firmage, that he was easily convinced to just give up millions of dollars to build a flying saucer machine, just via a few phone calls, and a guy who claimed that Mormon aliens appeared to him, Joe Firmage. He was instantly dumping his money and resources into this, and the same goes for Skinwalker. Like there's a pattern there of true belief and fuck you money. Like when you get fuck you money, like hell yeah, I'm gonna buy a spooky ranch, and hell yeah, I want to build flying saucers. So I don't see him as some nefarious. I don't see Fugels necessarily as some nefarious person when it comes to his kind of paranormal pursuits. They're littered throughout most of his life. He's been doing stuff like that, and so I'm convinced that he's just doing this because he believes it. Eric Bard, out of everyone there, everyone that I met, Eric Bard seemed the most true pursuer in that I never got a second bullshit from Eric Bard. Like, this is a guy who wholesomely, and I mean that word truly, wholesomely believes this stuff. That when he was showing me that video, you can watch, he's showing me this video, and it's so clearly a moth and or something equivalent. And he's just like, the way it zips away like the Millennium Falcon. Look at it zip away. And he saw that. I couldn't really see that, but he truly saw that. I don't think it was like some psyop. How do people believe it? Well, dude, people believe the craziest things. Joseph Smith, for example, walked into, in upstate New York and was like, God spoke to me last night and he gave me magical golden plates that tell the truth about Jesus. And people were like, can you show us the plates? And he was like, no, I can't do that. But people still followed him like by the thousands. And so there is enough of that in humanity that I need something. I need some answers. This guy seems to have some. I'll follow this for a while. So that's my only explanation. Is that it's like religious in nature. Um, Lynn, Lynn, go ahead, Lynn. Go ahead, Lynn.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm pleasantly surprised to see that you're having an AMA. So that's awesome. How did it feel to be linked to in the Kirkpatrick article?
Like I said, when I started this, it was shocking and surprising, and there was a little bit of vindication there. I didn't expect him. I didn't even know he knew about this reporting, and so it almost seemed like his reporting of what's going on was separate from mine, and then he saw my reporting. He was like, yeah, this is it, like this is exactly what's going on. So it was shocking and surprising, a little bit validating.
You didn't know anything about that?
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, like Kirkpatrick, I was still on the fence about Kirkpatrick, about where he stood and all this. How much relationship did he have with Stratton, with the Taylors of the world, with the Elizonders of the world? I wasn't sure. Like, he was kind of I requested to speak to him multiple times while he was still at DOD. Those requests were denied. There was very limited information about his backstory. The only little information I had was that, from Brandon Fugel, that he was the head of a Skinwalker Ranch briefing at the Senate Armed Services Committee in 2018. and supposedly, according to Fugel, believes this stuff. And so I was like, oh, okay, so maybe he's like part of the crew. Maybe he is part of this crew. Maybe he is part of the believers. Maybe he is a Stratton associate. I didn't know. And so to read this, I was like, holy shit. Like, this guy is not only dropping bombs, but he's dropping bombs that through well sourced evidence I have reported on. And I was like, in a way, I was kind of like, well, finally, someone else other than Greenstreet is saying this. And it just so happens to be the former head of the Pentagon's UFO office. So, no, I have never spoken to Kirkpatrick in my life, and it was surprising. Um, oh, I don't know if you had a follow up, Lynn, but you seem to have gone away. Let me just add you back as a speaker. Did you have did that answer your question, Lynn, or did you have something else to say?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you for a lot of that, so I had to drop out and come back in.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
TLDR, I've never spoken to Kirkpatrick. I wasn't very familiar with Kirkpatrick's background or association with some of these folks. And Kirkpatrick, in a lot of ways, was still a mystery to me. And so to read that op ed was surprising because it was, in a lot of ways, it established his point of view perhaps more saliently than previous. So I was quite surprised.
did it ever feel kind of like a highly flattering kind of reciprocal acknowledgement to you a little
No.
bit? Because
Mm,
I mean, you were talking about how Knapp is a legend, and he is, but you were kind of knocking him as well. And it seems like
oh
you
yeah.
really love Kirkpatrick. And I mean, obviously you're saying you're not, part of that team or whatever, and it was a complete shock to you that you were cited in that. But I mean, of
Yeah.
course, the suspicions that have been abounding, and yeah, it's
Well,
interesting to hear it from you.
suspicions like what?
I think you probably read a multitude of comments about where where your true research lies, and I could care less about who's paid for what.
I don't.
What I
I'm
do care
sorry.
about though is
Where my true research lies? What do you mean?
I where your true research lies. I think it looks very interesting the way that this is all come about with you being cited in Kirkpatrick's article. It doesn't seem like it's a coincidence, and but you're saying it was a surprise to you, and
Yeah.
you're the one that we get to hear it from. So thank
Yeah.
you for your
Sure.
answer.
Sure. Yeah. It was surprising to me again because as I said, Kirkpatrick was kind of a mystery to me. I mean, I think you said something that like I love him, and I definitely didn't say that. I think I've been saying this whole time. He's actually this mystery to me. I don't know much about him. I've tried to like reach out to him, never got to speak to him, so I just didn't know. Knapp obviously is a name that's been around for decades in this topic, so he's obviously love him or hate him, he is a legend. He is, of course, of a dubious nature and does promote false UFO stories at best, unsubstantiated UFO stories. But with Kirkpatrick, I don't know. And another thing is like, I guess the mainstream media has been horrific in covering this topic. They have not. No one really in the mainstream media has reported to the depths that I have. No one's taken the time, the effort. Most of it's lazy clickbait garbage. And so I guess if I was a Kirkpatrick and I was looking for external links, which, containing evidence that support what I'm saying, I guess there's not much to choose from right now in the mainstream media. If you go looking for a breakdown of how ATIP is a nickname for OSAP and how OSAP was, utilizing taxpayer resources to hunt ghosts at Skinwalker Ranch, there's not many journalistic articles out there to point to because no one's paying attention to any of this. I guess it is surprising and also unsurprising because I'm basically the only one. All right, we have a lot more here. Oh, dude, I want to hear from alien implant removal program, because that sounds rad. Alien implant. Go ahead.
A podcast or interview, you could look me up, and I've been on a lot of radio shows, podcasts about UFOs and stuff. I found some ancient civilizations in Mount Whitney. I discovered stuff in Sedona, in Mount.
Arizona? In Sedona, Arizona?
Yeah, Arizona, Sedona. Yeah, Arizona, Sedona. I found some weird stuff going on, man. I mean, and the thing is, I went to Mount Whitney and I got photographs of giant humans turned into stone and like a dinosaur dog and everything. And it's amazing.
What? Dude, I added you to speak because of your username, and you are not disappointed. That sounds amazing. A dinosaur dog?
I'm a scientist too, man. Dude, look, you think Skinwalker Ranch is something? If I take you out there at Mount Whitney, I call it the mountain beyond the veil where Snake River is. Dude,
Mm-hmm.
some weird shit going on over there. Skinwalker Ranch is nothing compared
That's
to.
awesome, dude. Dude, hit me up on Twitter, okay? Hit me up on Twitter. Here. Let's see here. Pavel. 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 Pavel, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I just wanted to, because I've been following this whole story for a few years, and the people I work with are asking me to do profiles on all the main players of this story, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I consider you one of those main players because you're like sort of like an antagonistic figure to many in the UFO community. So I just
Really?
wanted to ask you, um, do you believe in UFOs or do you not believe in UFOs or what do you believe?
Okay, good question. I believe UFOs are real. I think UFOs are a problem. I believe that flying objects in the sky that are unidentified are a problem. We have an aerospace awareness problem. We have an emerging technology with drone technology that there are still laws being drafted about how to deal with emerging drone technology. So there's a lot of question marks, a lot of gray area. Balloons and how to deal with them. Population is increasing. Statistically, you're going to get more trash and balloons in the sky. UFOs are a problem, and UFOs exist. Do alien UFOs exist? I don't think so. I haven't seen anything. And
What do
I
you think
asked,
they are?
do I think they are what?
What do you think they are? What's your like your best the best kind of hypothesis you have, maybe?
I don't know. It's kind of like asking what are car accidents, and it's like, well, which specific one? Because every case is different. So I'd have to ask you, like, what specific UFO?
Okay,
Do
let me put an example, just simple. What about David Fravor, Commander Fravor? His account. What do you think
Sure.
about his account? Because
It's a
he's a Navy pilot. I think he is credible.
yeah.
So what do you think about that one?
Well, I've changed with Fravor a little bit. So with Fravor, if you've got other witnesses, you've got Dietrich, you've got
Yeah.
other folks in and around that area. So something happened, right? I don't think anyone can say nothing happened. There's limited data, so that's unfortunate. So for the most part, we have to rely on testimony, but there are holes in this testimony. Recently I highlighted that multiple times Fravor talks about a 5-minute encounter. The object that he saw with his own eyes over 5 minutes. Dietrich, who was flying right next to him, claims it was only the eyeball encounter lasted 8 to 10 seconds. From the moment they first saw it to the moment it zipped away, 8 to 10 seconds. That's a huge discrepancy, and one that, I hope someone gets to the bottom to. But there are precedented things regarding that event that could explain it. There are So I don't know. It's a great story. Limited data. I would love for that. Nothing more for the Tic Tac to be something non-human. Could you guys do me one quick thing and just hold on while hold on. How the hell do I mute myself? I just got to say goodnight to my kid. It'll be like 30 seconds. Hold on.
All right.
All right, I'm back. Yeah. So with the Tic Tac thing is, I just need a starting point, I guess. You have Okay. At one point, Dietrich says that she and her one of her initial instincts was that they had flown into some kind of missile test, and she was pissed. Her words. I was pissed because this missile test was happening. We'd flown into the middle of it, and no one told us about it. Um, and we do know that Silent Hammer, which was a Navy was testing a multitude of things in that area around that time. So there are precedented historical little pieces to the puzzle you could put together to maybe explain it. DARPA, was flying God knows what, and the military was launching things from. And this is real. You can look it up. The military was Navy launching experimental stuff, test stuff from submarines in that area. And they explained they saw, what did they see? White water just underneath the surface, the size of a 747. Well, the fuselage of a 747 is around the same size as a submarine. Something's in the sky zipping past them. Dietrich's initial reaction that it was a missile test. He was angry. The fact that it was there and then gone in no time. I don't think there's enough there to push me to think that could have been something alien. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure, no problem. Okay. Let me see here. The requests. I'm just going to do maybe two more. Uh, you know what? Actually, 5 requests this week. Requests. I'm sorry, guys. I just don't see it. Some technical issues here. All right, I think I'm going to end things here. It was great. I said 60 minutes. I just went over 60 minutes, but I'm going to end things here. I'll do another one the next time. The next time Travis Taylor tells me to go to hell, I'll do another Twitter space. So I'll see y'all next week.